Unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks on this resolution under consideration.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of House Resolution 1251 to recognize and honor the United States troops who gave their lives on June 6, 1944, D-Day, at the Battle of Normandy on the coast of France. I'd like to thank my colleague from Texas, Mr. Poe, for bringing this measure before the House. In June of 1944, Nazi Germany still controlled all of Europe, save those portions of Italy which had already been liberated. Operation Overlord, the code name for the main landing of Allied forces in France, was to be the deciding battle of the war in Europe, opening up a major second front which would lead to the ultimate defeat of the Nazi regime. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight Eisenhower proclaimed that it was a battle that he would accept nothing but complete victory. Shortly after midnight on the 6th of June, 24,000 Allied forces consisting of American, British, Canadian, and Free French parachuted behind enemy lines at Normandy. Their mission was to disrupt the German ability to successfully repel the upcoming invasion. During the night, the largest flotilla of vessels ever assembled, before or since, began its trip across the English Channel to disembark some 150,000 Allied troops across a 50-mile stretch of the Normandy Beach. The initial beach assault began at 6:30 that morning. The code names of those beaches are seared in our memories: Utah and Omaha, the American objectives in Sword, Gold, and Juneau, British and Canadian objectives. Approximately 70,500 American soldiers went ashore as part of a larger operation to secure a beachhead from which to continue the offloading of troops, supplies, and equipment necessary for the push across France into the German homeland. This undertaking was one of the largest single amphibious operations ever conducted in the history of warfare. On that one day, American armed forces suffered an estimated 5,400 casualties, with 1,400 killed in action. The immeasurable sacrifice of those men should never be forgotten. House Resolution 1251 is our way of commending the United States Armed Forces who participated in Operation Overlord for their leadership and valor in a mission that helped bring an end to World War II. This resolution commemorates the actions of heroism and the military achievement by those soldiers. So now I'll call upon the members of the House to join me in supporting this resolution, thereby expressing our common appreciation and gratitude for the members of the United States Armed Forces involved in the D-Day operations and honoring the sacrifices made by our fellow countrymen so that others around the world may continue to know the gift of freedom. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I rise in strong support of House Resolution 1251 as amended, which honors the members of the United States military who died on D-Day, June 1944, during the Battle of Normandy. I want to commend Representative Ted Poe of Texas for sponsoring the legislation. The facts of the opening day of Operation Overlord, the start of what General Eisenhower called the Crusade in Europe, clearly set forth in the text of the resolution. This was the largest amphibious operation in history. The first U.S. Army group responsible for the landings on Omaha and Utah beaches was commanded by Omar Bradley, known as the Soldier's General, and I might add a native of Missouri. In breaching German defenses, the Allied forces suffered more than 10,000 casualties on the first day of the invasion. More than 1,400 Americans died. Beyond the facts of the invasion, however, is the heroism and unselfish sacrifice of the men who carried out this most magnificent operation. Because of that heroism and sacrifice, the door to Hitler's fortress Europe was cracked open. So it's entirely fitting that today, 66 years after that historic day, we take the time to honor and commemorate the men who made the ultimate sacrifice on June 6, 1944. Moreover, I would also urge my colleagues to take the time to individually thank, previous and current members of the armed forces they encounter for their service. I heartily recommend that and all my colleagues vote yes on this resolution, and I believe we have no other speakers. I would yield back the balance of our time, Madam Chair.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Again, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Congressman Poe for bringing this to our attention. At the end of what was possibly the greatest movie ever made, Saving Private Ryan, the central character played by Tom Hanks is Captain Miller. And as he is dying, he says in a voice barely more than a whisper to the character that is playing Private Ryan, "Earn this." It is a phenomenal message for every American, and it is great that Congressman Poe brought this measure to the floor for those of us who are here and the descendants of those who survived that battle, to say thank you to those who didn't. Madam Speaker, I have no further requests for my time, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 1251 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended and the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6102 as introduced.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 6102, a bill to amend the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2010 to extend the authority of the Secretary of the Navy to enter into multi-year contracts for FA-18E, FA-18F, and EA-18G aircraft.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Taylor, and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Akin, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume and ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks on the bill under consideration.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 6102, a necessary amendment to Section 128 of the fiscal year 2010 National Defense Authorization Act, which granted permission for the Secretary of the Navy to enter into a multi-year procurement contract for the F&A Series 18 series aircraft. Madam Speaker, I mentioned this as a necessary amendment, and I ask the patience of the House as I briefly explain the technical issue in law, which will prevent the Navy from entering into this cost-saving contract unless the House passes this bill and it is taken up in the Senate and passed before the end of this month. In the 2010 National Defense Authorization Act, Congress granted permission to the Navy for a multi-year contract if they could meet the intent of the requirements contained in Title 10 of the United States Code for projected cost savings. The authority granted the permission to miss the Title 10 reporting timelines as long as they submitted the required reports by March of this year. The Navy subsequently reported the significant cost savings this type of contract would achieve, but missed the reporting requirement by a month due to a variety of factors. As a result of the missing this reporting requirement, the letter of the law prevents them from entering into this cost-saving contract. To fix this new problem, this House subsequently agreed to the exact language contained in this bill when H.R. 5136, the fiscal year 2011 National Defense Authorization Act, passed the House in May. This standalone bill is necessary because the Senate has yet to take up fiscal year 2011 National Defense Authorization Act, which means we may not have an Authorization Act signed into law by the end of this fiscal year. Madam Speaker, this is not an argument about the number of strike fighters the Navy needs. That's a debate for another day. This is an argument that we know we can save hundreds of millions of dollars by using a multi-year contract to purchase the remaining 84 aircraft that are scheduled to be built. The majority of the economic savings in a multi-year contract come from savings in the cost of material and equipment. As any businessman or woman who has been successful will tell you, the more of any item you order, the lower the per unit cost will be. In this case, a multi-year contract will allow the prime vendor, in this case the Boeing Company, to contract with their vendor supply base for material and equipment for the remaining 84 aircraft all at once, instead of contracting for 25 to 30 per year. They will get a much better price with the larger order and save our nation $590 million. Madam Speaker, just the savings on this contract alone, the Navy will be able to purchase an additional littoral combat ship. Madam Speaker, an almost $600 million savings is too large a figure just to sweep under the rug. The bill that I offer today, along with my co-sponsor, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Akin, and I must add, strongly supported by the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gary Ruffhead, and the Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, will allow the Navy to enter into this contract by the end of this month. I am assured by Assistant Secretary of the Navy Stackley that all the contracting negotiations are complete, and as soon as this bill is passed by the House and Senate and signed into law by the President, the Navy and the Boeing Company will complete the contract. Madam Speaker, to use a phrase popular today, this is a no-brainer. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, which will result in an almost $600 million saving to the taxpayers. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the good comments from the chairman of the Navy and Marine Corps Subcommittee, Chairman Taylor, and he's got it absolutely right. This is pretty straightforward. This is just whether you want a good deal on buying something. There is a little bit more to it. And I would join with the many members of the Armed Services Committee, including Gene Taylor from Mississippi, and rise in support of 6102. This legislation was included in Section 122 of the fiscal year 2011 National Defense Authorization Act, which was passed unanimously by the subcommittee, the full committee, and by a majority of this House in May. Unfortunately, the Senate has not yet passed its version of the fiscal year 2011 defense bill. It's essential we pass the authorities contained in 6102 prior to the end of fiscal year 2010, which is why the chairman and I have co-sponsored this standalone bill today. Simply put, the legislation would ensure that the Navy can enter into a multi-year procurement contract for FNA 18E, F, and G aircraft, which would save the Navy and taxpayers almost $600 million. The Navy plans to buy 124 of these aircraft between now and 2013. This bill would make no changes to the quantity to be procured. Rather, between buying these aircraft in 4 one-year increments,